Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called The Lost Eclipse. Written by Regal Legal. The link to the original will be down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. A total solar eclipse is actually a relatively rare astral phenomenon for an inhabited world. So many things have to line up just right for it to happen. A planet having appropriately sized moon, a star just the right distance, no other astral bodies blocking anything. It all gotta line up perfectly. Not to mention all of the trouble of finding a planet that's already got life on it. And even then, a path of totality and a fairly narrow strip spread across the planet below. Well, narrow as far as the planet-sized distances are concerned, I mean. Dr. Gibbs added with a shrug at the end. And here we are. Amy sighed softly as she looked across the valley before them. It was only two of them out yet now. The fleet couldn't spare many civilians for what they deemed non-essential roles, so she was Dr. Gibbs' only grad student. They'd picked a small hill overlooking an area to better watch the eclipse, and as the light of the star above them slowly began to grow dimmer, she could sense the subtle yet growing unease of the animals who didn't understand what was happening. 7 billion years of existence, who knows how many millions of supporting life. Untold generations that lived and died here in the slow yet never-ending march of change. Species evolved to suit their environment and survive all manner of ecological disaster and natural predators. But for the dimming, their star is lost, now entirely confused, Dr. Gibbs added as they saw flocks of what passed for the planet's avians start to twist in circles as they tried to figure out what was going on. They could hear the soft braying of various animals through the valley as the sky grew even darker. Amy looked up at the star, her visor correcting the brightness to allow her to stare at it. How long do we have until totality? Won't be long, Dr. Gibbs replied, as they both kept watching. They didn't need to talk about it to know that they both knew that they should really be working still, gathering more specimens and ensuring that their ship was full to the brim. But they had a feeling that they needed to observe this. The planet deserved a moment of reverence as the light of the star was dimmed further and further as the two heavenly bodies above them intersected. To gather more specimens now seemed to be a bit like robbing a dying man. Though, to do it later would just be grave robbing, so they weren't sure if either option was better or worse. Was it like this when the animals back on Earth? Amy asked, tearing her eyes from the sky to look at the spiraling patterns of the avians in the sky, and see the clustering herd of animals as they brayed and called out, upset and disoriented by the change of the natural order. Yes, it's not like they had a capacity to understand it. Hell, humanity didn't even have the capacity to understand it either for a very long time. Old prophecies would speak of a portent of death, plague, famine, and all manner of evil brought on by what was nothing more than an entirety of natural and harmless event. When we finally understood it, I'm sure we laughed at the old superstitions, but the animals couldn't know. It is a deep, primal thing to fear the dark, and another to fear the sudden fading of the light. Dr. Gibbs sighed softly then. I didn't realize it would get so cold so quickly. Amy mentioned a suit notified her with the decrease in the ambient temperature. Blocking out the light of a star has that effect, Dr. Gibbs mentioned with a shrug. By now the edges of the horizon were still light, but their position at the center of the shadow made for an odd effect, as if the darkness were personally directed on them as of the hilltop. The only sapient life there was to witness it. Their visors further correcting the light above them as they could see the ethereal wisps of stars' corona leaking out from around the darkness. This doesn't seem right, Amy finally muttered. No? I believe it's all on schedule, Dr. Gibbs replied with a glance at his wrist to check his comm log. No, I mean, ethically, Amy said as waving her hand around. Like you said, there is 1,000,000 years of life, infinite possibilities for their future. Gone. Aren't there rules against doing this kind of thing? I imagine there were a lot of rules against all manner of things before we were reduced to a single wayward fleet, keeping just ahead of the scouts of our enemy. Dr. Gibbs wryly observed. Why this planet? Why not another? Any other? Amy asked next. The Admiralty doesn't make decisions like that lightly. This planet is rich in something. I don't know. It's not my field. Dr. Gibbs sounded tired at that moment, defeated almost, as if the only thing that he could do to deflect some measure of his own guilt and sorrow was to pretend as if it was all in the hands of another. That his ignorance in the matter left a gulf of mystery that only imagination could fill with the importance of what lay beneath the surface of the world that they stood on, to tip the scales against the life that was all around them. The rustling trees, the bushes in the wind, the worried calls of the animals, the panicked cries of the avians as the air looking for a place to shelter this sudden onset of night. By now, their visors had been compensated fully as they stood in totality. This disk above them was no natural moon, but a ship, massive in both scope and function, its arms slowly unfolding high above the world as a million souls prepared for their labors ahead. So we kill a planet full of life, hundreds of species dead, gone to the universe forevermore. Amy growled. Not quite, our ship is almost full. They'll continue to exist in some capacity. The Admiralty is giving us the resources to ensure to avoid total extinction, even species that aren't useful as cattle or food. It was Dr. Gibbs' small victory, but he clung to it tightly. What life is that, to live within a ship for all of their days? Their home gone, their sky taken. Does their inability to fully comprehend this make it any better? Amy tore her eyes from the Eclipse above them to eye Dr. Gibbs directly. Are you asking on their behalf or ours? Dr. Gibbs asked back. Life in the fleet is our only chance, right? We know that. They might not, but it will be true for them now too. If it wasn't for the last eclipse, then it would be ours. Existence is conflict. Survival is struggle. That sounds suspiciously like something the enemy would say. Amy growled softly, with an accusatory tone. That doesn't make them wrong, Dr. Gibbs replied with a shrug. What can we afford to do or not to do in the face of extinction? Should we mourn for these animals' lack of sapience, or celebrate that their ignorance saves them a small measure of fear in these last days of life of this world? We have created a ship the size of a moon. We eat planets so that we do not suffer the same fate. We are, if nothing else, determined to exist. But does our determination make us heroes or monsters? Amy's question hung in the air between them. At first, the only answer was the uneasy sounds of the animals in the valley who were only understood that something was wrong with the world. Finally, Dr. Gibbs responded with the only thing that he could think of. I don't know, but we need to get back to work. Once the arms are extended, they'll deploy the tethers, and we don't want to be around when that happens. If we delay the schedule, any existential crises will have to be in the least of our worries. Unless you enjoy Captain Ong's screaming matches, Dr. Gibbs suggested with a long glance at his lone student. Her shoulders sagged as she had to weigh the comfort of her life and the lives of everyone else in the fleet against her concerns over the planet that she'd only just set foot on. A planet lacking sapient life, but rich in whatever it was that they needed. She also had to weigh her soul against being screamed at, and after a moment she turned to start walking back down the hill. All right, let's get back to work then. Maybe I'll feel better once we get to enjoy the fresh meat for once. I'm not sure I even remember what it's like to eat anything other than food paste. Honestly, I envy that about you youngsters. The fake steak that they serve sometimes just makes me depressed. Dr. Gibbs turned to follow her as they turned their backs upon the nameless planet's first and last eclipse. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers.